record, will you please state your first and last name and spell your first and last name?
Aaron Dillard, Aaron Dillard.
And, you know, you may be here for a while, so if it'd make you more comfortable, you can take your coat off.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Dillard, you just walked through the front door of the courtroom as promised by defense counsel during his opening. And how is it that that happened, that you were able to walk through the front door of the courtroom instead of being brought in here in prisoner's clothes, if you can tell us?
Well, I got released from prison.
So you were in prison, and then you talked to me, and then some period of time later, you got released from prison, right?
Well, yes, sir.
How did that happen?
In agreement, the state, I provided information on this trial, and the state offered a recommendation to the state for probate, or to be released, to get released on extended supervision.
So that was a pretty good deal for you, wasn't it?
Yes.
Now, tell us about the conversations that led up to that resolution.
With Mark Jensen, or
No, with
yourself?
me.
The conversations with you I had were pertaining to the case of Mark Jensen. In regards to that, you offered to make a recommendation for probation, or for extended supervision to be re-extended.
What were your concerns about? What were your concerns about remaining in an institution after you cooperated with authorities?
Objection to relevance. Improper bolstering.
Yeah, it sounds like something that wouldn't be appropriate at this point in the examination.
Well, what are the terms of the agreement that exists between you and the prosecution in this case?
Well, objection to the extent that it calls for the same answer.
No, I don't think so.
Well, it's not the entirety of the answer, but I think it's a portion of it.
I don't know what the answer is going to be until the witness tells us, and I certainly think it's appropriate, Your Honor, to ask a witness if there's an agreement. In fact, I'm ethically obligated to let the jury know what kind of agreement.
Speaking objection.
Just wait. The objection's overruled.
That means you can answer the question. You remember what the question is, sir?
Yes, it's to tell the truth and that I uphold all obligations of the law.
Now, when you were released from custody, does that mean you're discharged from your obligations to the criminal justice system?
Absolutely not.
Why is that? What obligations that remain with respect to your obligations to the criminal justice system?
I am on extended supervision, and I face about 4.5 years of prison if I were to violate any conditions of my extended supervision.
And what are the conditions of your extended supervision?
To obey the laws. I'm not allowed to do certain things. They have certain conditions set against me, like I can't have over $100 in my pocket at one time, can't use credit cards, just general rules like that.
You can't steal any money from anybody?
That's, I would believe, falls under the obeying the law.
And tell us about your prior criminal history. Do you have any idea how many prior criminal convictions you have in this country?
I believe 7.
And do you have any prior convictions in any other countries?
Yes, Lithuania.
And what kind of convictions do you have in Lithuania?
That'd be visa fraud, immigration visa fraud.
Do you know how many counts you were convicted of there? Or I don't even know if they call them counts, but...
They don't call them counts, but there was, I believe, 5 victims.
So 5 different crimes?
Yes.
And you've had victims here in the United States as well?
Yes, sir.
So let's start with the earliest portion of your criminal history that you can remember. What was your first criminal conviction about?
I issued a worthless check. I bounced a check to a ski company.
I'm sorry.
I bounced a check to pay for skis.
And how long ago was that?
1993, I believe, but I was convicted in 95.
And how much was the check for?
I believe, I can't recall the exact amount. It's about 800 to 1,000, I would believe.
So they're pretty good skis.
Yes.
And when you wrote that check for $800 or $1,000, did you have any reason to believe that there was enough money to pay for those skis in your checking?
Yeah, I believe, I knew there wasn't at the time, but I hoped to put it in time. I was expecting some money and I wanted to go on a ski trip. And just, it didn't fall through and I didn't put the money.
So you kind of made a promise you couldn't keep.
Yes.
And do you think that kind of falls into the category of a lot of the problems that you've had in your life?
Yes.
A lot of problems you created in other people's lives too.
Yes.
You made promises to people and then you didn't keep them.
Yes.
And what's the promise you made to the prosecution in this case?
To tell the truth.
And let's tell the jury about the next criminal piece of activity that resulted in a criminal conviction in your case.
I believe the next one would be also, I bounced a check to Walmart in '99.
And how much was that check for, do you remember?
It was a low amount. I don't remember the exact amount.
Less than $500?
Yes, yes.
And what was the next criminal piece of activity that you engaged in after that?
In 2000, I forged a check. I printed a check on a computer.
And how much was that check for?
There was a number of them, about $400 a piece.
How many?
8, 7, somewhere around there. So about 3,200, roughly.
And tell us about that scam. Who cashed the checks for you?
I printed them on the computer, used check stock and just printed fake account numbers on it and just went to like different bars and cashed them as payroll checks.
So as you were doing this, you knew that these people that were cashing the check were going to likely be out that money, or the bank was going to be out that money?
Yes.
And you did it anyway?
Yes.
And so you were convicted of that offense?
Yes, I was.
And what's the next piece of criminal activity that you engaged in where you got a conviction?
In regards to this case, I was out on bail and I didn't show up for court, so I got a bail jumping charge.
When you say which case, what?
When I forged the checks.
So you were out on bail?
Yes.
And what happened while you were out on bail?
I went to Nevada and then didn't show up for court.
And how was it you were able to afford to go to Nevada?
I really couldn't afford it, but I also had other forms of income as work and just doing side jobs, construction jobs.
So who'd you go to Nevada with?
My cousin.
Anybody else?
Yes, I did on that trip. I forget her name. It was a woman. I just can't draw the name out of my head.
And while you were in Nevada, you used her credit card to pay for your hotel room, right?
That is not true.
Oh, well, tell me what happened.
On that trip, she got a little upset with my cousin and I and ended up leaving. She paid for the hotel and she stayed with her ex-husband and said we were supposed to pay for the hotel room. So she actually went to the hotel with us. She booked it in with her credit card and signed all the receipts herself.
So you didn't take her credit card in, she took it in?
Yes.
But you didn't pay for the hotel room?
No.
And did you ever reimburse her for paying for your hotel room?
No, I did not.
And you got a bail jumping charge on that?
Yes, I did.
And what's the next piece of criminal activity that resulted in a conviction?
While out on bond as well, I, in Racine County, forged a check to an ABC supply company.
Tell us about that.
I needed a compressor to do a construction job and I didn't have the money, so I wrote a check.
And how much was the check for?
$800.
And that was enough to pay for the compressor and some other things?
Just the compressor.
And you had no money to pay for that check?
Correct.
And so you ripped off the supply company?
Yes.
Did you ever pay him back?
I'm in the process of doing that now.
Because you were ordered by the court to pay them back?
sorry?
Because you're ordered by the court to pay them back?
Yes.
That's a condition of your probation?
Yes.
And what's the next piece of criminal activity that you engaged in?
Then in Lithuania, that's the one that falls in that time bracket as well. I promised people visas and didn't produce them.
You promised them visas and you had them pay for the visas.
Correct.
How much would you have each of these people pay for a visa?
Anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000.
And this is in Lithuania.
Yes.
And would you say Lithuania is an impoverished country?
Yes. I mean, as far as our standards go, as far as their incomes, it's acceptable with the amount of money they make, they can live.
So $3,000 to $5,000 is a lot of money in Lithuania.
A lot to them, yes.
A lot more money than it is here.
Away, yeah,
Some of these people, is it like their life savings?
pretty much.
So you take their life savings,
Yes,
promise them a visa,
yes,
and then you wouldn't produce it,
correct.
crushing their hopes
Yes,
and emptying out their bank accounts.
yes,
And you did that several times in Lithuania?
yes,
And you got busted in Lithuania for that?
yes,
And you served some time in Lithuania?
yes.
And then what happened?
I came back, I got deported to America.
Lithuania threw you out.
Yes,
And you're an American citizen?
yes,
So we had to take you back, right?
yes.
And what happened when you got back here?
I was released, I was free, and then I violated my probation. Then I got sentenced on the forgeries, and I was on probation, and then I violated that probation.
How'd you violate it?
By doing construction jobs that I wasn't supposed to be doing, and other things, just lots of violations.
And so you got locked up again?
Yes,
And you were looking to get revoked, right?
yes.
In fact, had they completed the revocation hearing?
On that revocation, yes, they did.
And how much time did you get sentenced to?
A year in prison.
And have you served that year in prison?
Yes, I did.
And were you on probation or parole supervision at the same time on some other charges?
Not at that time. I was on the Racine case too for the forgery as well. So both of those.
At some point while you were out, you got locked back up again.
Yes,
And was this before or after you'd served the one-year term?
after.
So you served the one-year term and you got out.
Yes,
How long were you out for before you got locked up again?
roughly a year.
And what'd you get locked up for the next time?
Same violations, doing construction jobs that I wasn't supposed to, possessing a cell phone, things like that.
You were violating conditions of probation supervision?
Yes,
And you also caught a new case in Racine, right?
yes, I did.
And have you been charged with a criminal offense in Racine yet?
Yes, I have.
What have you been charged with in Racine?
Theft by contractor.
And how much money was involved in that, do you know?
I believe she says $6,200.
And that case is still pending?
Yes,
And you understand that by testifying here today, you waived your right, your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination?
I didn't understand that in this case. I thought that this case wouldn't be discussed because I didn't think it had any relevance, but I understand it now.
You understand that it can be?
Yes.
And you're still here testifying?
Yes,
And it's a condition of this agreement that you testify truthfully?
yes.
And is-
Objection has been asked and answered twice.
How is it that you came to contact the authorities concerning this case involving Mark Jensen?
I wrote a letter to my lawyer and asked to talk to you.
In that letter to your lawyer, did you tell who is your lawyer, by the way?
Gretchen Rosanke.
In your letter to Attorney Rosenke, did you explain to her why you wanted to talk to us?
Yes, to discuss the Mark Jensen case.
And this is a communication to your lawyer?
Yes.
And, well, why did you want to talk to the prosecution about the Mark Jensen case?
To provide information because of what he did.
And what did you hope to get out of it?
Just my extended supervision release.
And tell us about the first time that you saw Mark Jensen.
The first time I saw Mark Jensen is when I walked into his cell block in Kenosha County Jail.
And when was that?
I believe it was the middle of August 14th, I think it was.
Of 2007?
Correct.
And what cell block was that, and what jail was that in?
Kenosha County Jail, in J Block.
So when you first walked into that cell block, Mark Jensen was already there?
Yes.
And what were you doing there?
I was waiting to be sentenced on my extended supervision. I would come back from prison to be sentenced.
And had you and your attorney discussed how much time you were facing?
Objection. Hearsay.
It doesn't strike me as being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Objection to it.
What was your assessment of how much time you were facing at the time that you were in the Kenosha County Jail awaiting sentencing?
I was facing roughly 4.5 years, and I believed I would have gotten about 1.5 to 2 at most.
You thought you might get up to 2 years?
Maximum, yes. I figured a year and a half.
Were you just being unusually optimistic, or did you have some information from your lawyer that caused you to think that?
It's just kind of standard procedure. If you get revocated according to your violations, it's either 30, 60, or all your time. So I was basing my categories on a 60% or a 30% violation.
Do you remember what your agent was recommending, your probation agent?
Yes, my agent was recommending 3 years.
3 years?
Yes. Well, she in the beginning she was recommending 3, and then she jumped it up to the full 4.5. So in the end, she ended up recommending 4.5 years.
So she was recommending 4.5 years,
Correct.
but you were hopeful it was only going to be 2 years.
Yes.
And then you met Mark Jensen.
Yes.
Tell me about meeting Mark Jensen.
I just met him in the cell block. We just started talking and just had a general conversations in the beginning.
How much time elapsed between the point where you first saw Mark Jensen and the point where you first started talking to him?
I would say, well, within 30 minutes, I bet you we were talking.
And did you initiate the conversation with him, or did he initiate the conversation with you?
I think it's a mutual thing. I mean, everybody just starts, there's only 10 people in a block, and everybody just kind of talks to everybody, so I could have initiated the conversation.
When you first saw Mark Jensen, did you know who he was?
I knew of him, didn't know him, though.
But you knew of him, you knew he was charged with murdering his wife.
Yes.
So tell us about this initial conversation that you had with Mark Jensen.
The initial conversations are just basically, well, what are you in here for? What happened? You know, things like that. The conversation, he told me that he got his bond revoked because of Edward Klug's letter, or he came forward and said that he wanted to poison his wife, and they revoked his bond for that, and then we just started talking from there.
And did Mr. Jensen seem upset with Mr. Klug?
Yes.
And what was it that Mr. Jensen said to you that caused you to believe that Mr. Jensen was upset with Mr. Klug?
Well, he said it was, excuse my language, he said it was bullshit, and that he was just an attention getter, and he, why would he come back 9 years later and say anything, or 7, whatever years it is, and say anything about it now, that he's lying, things like that.
And by the way, when I'm asking you to quote something, even if the language was the language that might be acceptable in a prison and not in a courtroom, you're supposed to quote the person exactly if you can. So how did you respond to what Mr. Jensen said to you?
I basically asked him, well, why would he come forward? Why would he say anything as to that matter?
Now, at the time that you were having this conversation with Mr. Jensen, was it your intention to try to utilize this information in some way against him or to your benefit?
Not in the beginning, no. It was just general conversation.
Okay. So what else did you and Mark Jensen talk about at that time?
At that time, basically, we just kept talking about the Klug situation and what happened, and he let me read the Klug transcripts from the court proceedings.
Well, did he ever ask you what you were in there for?
Yeah. And I said I was being revoked on my extended supervision.
Did you tell him what you were being revoked for? Did you tell him anything about your prior criminal history?
Yeah, I did. I told him that I was, had served time in Lithuania for the visa fraud, and I told him about the home improvement fraud because he owned a construction company too, so we went into conversations about that.
Well, tell us about the conversations you had about the construction industry.
Well, we have a couple mutual friends that we didn't know at the time knew each other, and we were just talking about them, and we talked about my case as far as, what I was there for, is like the new case in Racine that I was being charged for supposedly taking a deposit and then not completing the job. And it was just general conversations about that. I don't know the exact details of the conversation as far as what words were used when we talked about the case, but we just basically, I told him everything I was in for.
So when you were first talking with Mark Jensen, would you say the conversation was predominantly about the things that you had in common, or was it predominantly about his case, or
In the very, very beginning, it was things we had in common. Then it moved on to the case because the Klug thing came up.
And how long after you commenced talking with Mark Jensen was it before the Klug thing came up?
It was the first day, and I believe I got into the cell block around 6 o'clock, and lockdown's 9 o'clock, so anywhere in that 3 hours.
6 p.m. and 9 p.m.?
Yeah. It was towards the end of it.
And so he was telling you, in his words, that it was BS.
Yes.
And how did you respond to that?
Well, I responded by, why would they come forward? And then he gave me the transcripts to let me read it, and that was it. I said, well, I said, it is what it is. It's...
So when did he give you the transcript to read?
I believe it was that night. That night he gave it to me.
And it was a transcript of Ed Klug's testimony at the forfeiture hearing?
Yes, it was.
And so did you read that entire transcript?
Yes, I did.
And that was before lockdown at 9 p.m.?
Yes.
And where was Mark Jensen while you were reading this transcript?
In the day room, and he gave it to me, and I went in my bunk. It's maybe 10 feet away is the distances.
Do you remember how long you spent reading the Klug transcript?
Roughly in 45 minutes, an hour.
And after you finished reading it, did you have any conversation with Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
And did he initiate that conversation with you, or did you initiate it with him?
Well, he gave it to me expecting a response from reading it to see what I thought of it.
Well, what did he say to you when he gave it to you to read?
Well, he just says that, he was looking for what I thought, what my opinion of it was, if it was anything that was credible or anything like that.
So he was asking your opinion regarding this testimony?
Yes.
And so you read the testimony?
Yes.
Did you tell him what you thought of it?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
Well, I told him that you're pretty much fucked. And because of the words that were in there, he told Klug all this, and Klug was making phone calls to his secretaries or his wife. And in the testimony, he said that he spoke, when he got back to the office, he spoke to his secretaries or somebody at the office and said in the thing that he told them what happened. And I said, if they corroborate that story, I said, you're fucked.
And how did Mr. Jensen take that news?
Well, he kept saying that Klug was an attention seeker and that's basically it, that it's all bullshit, and that's the way it was. You said you wanted quotes, so I'm sorry.
I want to hear exactly what he said and exactly what you said. So when he was making these statements about the Klug statement, how did you respond to that?
Well, like I said, I told him you screwed, that, if they corroborate that story, then there's nothing you can say about it. It's you did it.
And how long did that discussion persist?
Well, until lockdown, and then it started up again the next morning.
So tell us about the last exchanges that occurred between you and Mr. Jensen before lockdown.
It was basically exactly what I just said. It was just, you're screwed. And then he would tell me how he's an attention seeker and that he says it's all bullshit, that this never happened, and to that fact.
Now, at the time that you were talking with Mr. Jensen, was it your intention to relate your honest impressions, or were you trying to scam him or con him in some way?
No, I was telling him the truth, what I thought about it.
You had not at that point thought that maybe there was something you could use in this case?
Not in the beginning, no.
Okay. Well, then you woke up the next morning? Mm-hmm. And how much time elapsed after you woke up before you and Mr. Jensen started talking again?
Well, it's a small pod, so it was pretty much right away. Everybody talks in the morning. But as far as conversations regarding this case, I would say about 10 o'clock in the morning.
And who initiated those conversations, you or he?
Both of us. I believe it was just a mutual thing. We talked, and we blend into every conversation.
When you and Mr. Jensen were having this conversation, were you in the midst of a group of inmates, or were you off by yourselves?
Most of the time we were off by ourselves.
Where were you?
In the back of the block.
And what's in the back of the block?
It's just the wall, where the heater vent is, and it's just away from the TV and the tables.
Were you sitting or standing?
Both.
So there are chairs back there?
No, you'd sit on the floor. It's jail. You make do.
So this conversation started up again 10 o'clock the next morning.
Yes.
And tell us about that conversation.
Well, the conversations basically pertain to the Klug testimony. Sorry, I keep mistaking his name. But pertain to the Klug testimony. And as far as, what I really thought about it, and then it just kind of blended into, what do you think I can do about this? What can I, how can I get around this?
And Mark Jensen was asking you that?
Yeah.
And how long after you started talking with him the next morning was it that this issue came up where he'd said, how can I get around this?
I would say noonish. Through the conversation, they're long conversations, so blended time, I'd say a couple hours.
So he was asking for your advice?
Yeah.
Do you have was there any information you conveyed to him that should reasonably cause him to think that you were a good person to talk to about this?
Well, I mean, we talked about my Lithuanian stuff, and we talked about a lot of things, so I guess he was just talkative.
And so he asked you, is there any way to get around this?
Yeah.
And what'd you say to him?
I said the letter is only if they don't corroborate what Klug said. If they don't corroborate it, then you're fine, but if they corroborate it, you're fucked.
And that was around noon that conversation turned that way?
Yes.
Did you ever start challenging Jensen from your own perspective as to whether or not it appeared that he was being truthful with you?
Throughout the course of this day, it was towards the end of the day, yes, then I started challenging a little bit, but most of the information he was given, he was just talking about different things going on in the case.
Well, what kind of things was he talking about going on in the case?
Well, he was laughing at you about your Benadryl.
Well, tell me about that.
He was laughing that he said you came in and put the bottle of Benadryl on the table and, said he poisoned his wife with Benadryl and antifreeze and things along that sort. And he was kind of laughing about, well, if I gave her that much Benadryl and I mix it with antifreeze, she'd be full of Benadryl, that kind of thing.
Okay, so he was pretty dismissive of my theory from the forfeiture hearing.
Yes.
Did he say anything else about the Benadryl?
That the only Benadryl that he would use was, or in the house at that time, was gel caps.
He specifically said gel caps?
Yes.
So they didn't have Benadryl in liquid form in the house, according to him?
According to him, yes, that's what he said.
Aside from Klug's transcript, had he given you any other documents to read in this case?
No.
Did you ever see any other documents that he had in his possession?
No, I have not.
So this conversation where he was being dismissive of the theory that I had about the Benadryl, when did that occur in the...
That day, throughout the conversation from 10 o'clock on, so it was fairly early in the day.
So it was still in the morning or was it in the afternoon, or don't you remember?
I would say mid-morning, mid-afternoon, right there.
So what happened after he'd made these remarks about the antifreeze and the Benadryl?
Well, it was just, I questioned him, well, then how'd she get the antifreeze in her system, and then that. And he says, well, I don't, he gave me this, what am I supposed to do, hold her mouth open and pour it down her throat or stick a tube down her throat? He was saying stuff like that and then trying to discredit everything about, he was proclaiming his innocence at that point.
And how were you responding to his proclamations of innocence?
Well, I kept, trying to give him, well, why would they say this, or how did it happen? How did she get it? You're saying she drank it? What are you saying? And he would not give me a direct answer at the time.
Now, at this point, were you just playing devil's advocate? Were you just having a conversation with him, or what were you doing? Why were you asking him?
Playing devil's advocate at the time, just to try to find out and have a conversation. I thought it was interesting. Mark Jensen's an interesting guy.
And wasn't a whole lot else to do in that jail cell, jail block?
Nope, there was nobody else really to talk to, anything like that. It was kind of a...
So as you and he were having this conversation throughout this day, where were the other inmates?
At the table or sleeping.
And where were you and Mark Jensen while you were having this conversation?
In the back of the day room.
Sitting on the floor, standing?
Yes.
So how long did that continue, where he was telling you his version and you were playing devil's advocate?
It happened off and on all day, but I would say in the course of that day, we probably spent about, I would say, throughout the day, 6-7 hours talking at least.
Was it hard to get Mark Jensen to talk to you?
As far as talking, no, it wasn't hard at all. He was he liked to have conversations, so.
He liked to talk?
Yeah.
Did you see him talking to any other inmates in the cell block at that time?
Not too much. There was only really one other guy. There would be general conversations, but as far as talking to anybody, there would only be one other person I think he would talk to.
Who was the other person he would talk to?
I'm not sure of his name. He was in cell block 6, or cell 6.
Can you describe the person that was in cell 6?
He was white, probably about 5'10", about 220 pounds, a little thicker.
Okay. Well, how long did you and Mark continue to talk during the course of this day?
Like I said, about 6-7 hours at least. I mean, throughout the course of the day, because we get broke up for, you eat lunch and stuff like that. So, and then in jail, you take a lot of naps, I guess.
Do you remember any other specific factual representations he made concerning this case?
Yes, I mean, there was a lot of things that we talked about through the course of that day and the next day.
Well, tell me as much as you can remember about what you talked about during the course of that day.
The course of that day, it was in general, just I told him about the blood test because we were trying to find ways around things, and I said, well, demand copy, you said, because, oh, that's right, he told me about the, that you guys lost all the transcripts or all the paperwork from the toxicology reports and all that stuff, and then he was making comments about that. I said, well, then if that's true, then you can just make your lawyer order new blood tests and have your own blood work done, and if they can't produce the blood samples, that should be a pretty decent way out of it.
And how did he respond to that suggestion?
I believe he talked to somebody. He was interested in it, very interested, and he talked to somebody on the phone about it.
You didn't hear the conversation?
I didn't hear the whole conversation, but at the end of the conversation, I was like, did you tell him I told you? That kind of thing.
You were asking...
Mark, if he told him, because I heard him talking, I said, you didn't tell him I told you.
Why were you concerned about that?
Well, I just, we were having a conversation. I guess I just didn't want to be a part of it at that time.
A part of the case?
Yeah.
When did this phone conversation occur?
That phone conversation, I believe, occurred... It's either the second day in the evening or the third day in the evening. I can't remember for sure.
Now, well, tell us, let's get back to the second day again.
Mm-hmm.
He would tell you something and then you would challenge it?
Well, I would challenge it or agree with it either way. I would try to find out why he was saying what he was saying. I mean, it was more of an interesting conversation in the beginning. I was trying to see what he was about.
And were there any other factual representations or statements he made to you during the course of the second day?
Well, I mean, he was telling me that basically his wife was crazy, that she was insane, and that she would self-medicate herself, things like that, things along that line, that she was taking, St. John's wort, a lot of just things. She was keen on St. John's wort a lot. He said that word a million times. But he would talk about how she was just depressed all the time, things like that, and just. Well,
let's for a moment try to remember. Think, if you will.
Okay.
Mention can you remember all of the drugs that Mark Jensen made reference to that he said that his wife was taking?
St. John's wort, the Benadryl, Literal, I think Literum, something for Mark's esophagus problem. Paxil, Ambien. And some other, I don't know the other ones. I think that was pretty much it.
So the information you got with regard to these drugs, that all came from Mark Jensen?
Yes.
Nothing, no other source?
No.
And was that when was it that he started mentioning those drugs? Was that during the first, second, or third day, or?
I think it was the second day still. That was the second day because we were talking about, because in that day he was also talking about, like I said, as far as his wife being crazy, and she was nuts, and she was depressed all the time, and she'd, yell at the kids and this and that, and he didn't know what was wrong, and she was self-medicating, and that was his saying she killed herself, that kind of thing at that time.
So how would you respond to that?
I would just say, well, I don't know, because I would talk about the Klug testimony and say, well, why would he come up with that one?
And how would he respond to that?
Well, basically, it was that he's an attention seeker, and that never happened. At that time, that's what he would say.
And how long, at some point, did Mark Jensen ever change his story?
Yes.
When did that occur?
On the third day.
When during the third day?
Well, we started talking again in the morning, and it just bled in to that conversation about what happened, and I would tell him, I was telling him I'd think of what he could say or do, or, you know, what I thought of the case and stuff like that. And then that next day, it just got into a little bit more deeper conversations about the kids and things like that, about how once he came home and one kid was naked in one room and the other kid was naked in another room, stuff like that.
He told you that?
Yes.
And that was during which day?
Third day.
When during the third day?
I would say from the morning to noonish, somewhere in there.
And how did that come up?
Well, we were talking about his wife being nuts again, you know, and he was talking about the wife's brothers, you know, committed suicide, or, you know, it's just that suicide ran in her family and all of them are nuts and everything along that line.
So he was telling this all about the Griffin family?
I didn't know their names at the time, so.
Julie's family?
Yes, Julie's family.
Did he ever say anything to you about Julie that would cause you to think that he in any way regretted her death?
No,
Did he ever tell you that he missed Julie?
never.
Did he ever express any emotion at all when he was talking about
I
Julie?
object to the relevance.
It doesn't, overruled, or sustained.
Did he ever, at some point, did Mark Jensen's explanation to you of what had occurred in this case change?
Yes, the third day, if I'm understanding the question right, is you asked if he changed his view on what happened.
Changed his story to you about what
Yes,
happened?
yes.
When did that happen on the third
The
day?
third day, more towards the middle afternoon. That's,
So you and he had been talking the whole day?
yeah, on the third day, we talked a good chunk of the day.
And tell us about the conversation that led up to this point where Mark Jensen changed his story about what had happened.
In the evening, you know, that's when it started when he started talking about him saying that Julie was crazy and that about the kids being naked in one room and this, and how he would snap on the kids in restaurants, or she would snap on the kids in restaurants and just yell all the time and just go crazy at odd points. And then he started getting a little bit more.
Stop. When he was telling you this, was this during the second day or the third day?
This is the third day, as far as that, about the kids naked and that.
When in the third day?
That I told you, I believe, was between 10 and 12 in the morning when we were talking about that stuff.
Okay. And how did you respond to what he was telling you?
I mean, I just kind of was like, well, wow, what's going on, you know? And then that's when he told me she was crazy, you know, it kept going on. She was crazy. She was insane. She'd do all this stuff. He said he wanted her to get a job. He wanted her to get a job, something like that, you know, that he wanted to get it out so she would try to loosen up and go out with people, that he would try to convince her to go out with friends and they would go places, things like that. And I would be like, well, why does she act like that? And he goes, well, that's why she was self-medicating herself, is to try to stop doing these things.
So you were asking questions and he was explaining the answers.
Yeah.
And so what led up, how did the conversation tend in the direction where he changed his story about what had happened?
Well, that's when we were talking about the kids being naked in one side of the room and the other side of the room. And then that's when he started getting a little bit more emotional about everything.
How did he start getting more emotional about everything?
Well, I mean, it seemed like he was getting more into his feelings when he discussed his kids.
What was it that you saw about him that caused you to think he was getting more emotional?
He was a little bit teary-eyed, just, you know, glassy-eyed, things like that.
When he was talking about his children?
Yes.
What happened then?
That's when the conversation progressed a little bit more, and then, you know, basically the whole point of where we said, I said, you know, everybody has their problems. I mean, I think, you know, that's where the point came up where I said, I think you did it.
Well, tell us about what you said to him when you confronted him in that fashion.
I believe my conversation went into the line of, well, you know, we all did something, you know, to get where we are, and, you know, you did it. And then he proceeded. That's when he said, well, yeah, we all have situations.
He said we all have situations?
It's something to that line. I don't know the exact words that were said. It was, you know, this is how many months ago that the conversations were.
And so he said, well, we all have situations, and how did you respond to that?
Yeah, I go, yeah, we do, and then we all did it to get here, you know, and I implied that he did it.
And how did he respond to that?
That's in the point, and he just was like, yeah, you know, yeah, just simple answer.
And he said, yeah, and then what did you do?
Well, then the conversation proceeded of, well, then, Mark, how did she get the antifreeze? And then that's where the conversation turned into where he started explaining what he did.
Tell the jury what Mr. Jensen told you about what he did.
Mark Jensen said that this is the conversation out of his mouth for what happened to that. He said that they went to the doctor because she was really depressed and things like that, and that when he went to the doctor, they gave her Paxil, and then they came home, she took the medication, and at that point is when he said that she got loopy because she took Benadryl, Paxil, and then I think it was the Librium at that time, and that she got real loopy and this and that, and she wanted to lay down. She just was real tired, so he gave her juice to drink, and that was when he told me at that point that it was mixed with the antifreeze.
Did he tell you how much antifreeze and how much juice?
No, not exactly the amounts. He didn't go into detail about that.
Did he tell you what happened next then? By the way, when he said that to you, how did you respond?
I was just wowed. I was just like, that's the point where a lot of things changed.
What do you mean?
Well, at that point, I decided it was a way out.
You're hearing about a confession to a murder.
Yeah.
And you thought you might use that.
Yes.
So you started paying careful attention?
Yes, that's when I started paying a little bit more attention to everything.
So he told you about the antifreeze and the juice.
Mm-hmm.
And what time of day was this that this conversation was taking place?
After lunch.
Where were you located?
In the back, in the back of the cell block.
Were there any other inmates around?
Not at that time, but I was talking to another inmate saying, this guy's telling me everything.
Objection, hearsay.
Well, it strikes me that this particular comment is not being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. And beyond that, I would, it strikes me as an excited utterance. The objection is overruled.
So who was this inmate that you're talking to?
Dion Hardison.
How'd you know Dion Hardison?
We rode on the bus back from prison together, or from prison to jail together.
Where was Dillard Hardison when these conversations were occurring between you and Mark?
In the day room or in his cell.
What did you say to Dillard Hardison besides, this guy's telling me everything?
I was like, I was trying to get him to come out and listen to what we were saying.
Dillard Hardison?
Yeah.
And did Dillard Hardison attempt to come and listen to what was being said?
Yes.
And what would happen when he would do that?
Basically, the conversations would stop.
Mark would stop talking?
Yeah.
Until Dillard Hardison moved away?
Yes.
And then would Mark start talking again?
Yeah, we would go back into the conversation.
So after Mark had made this first statement to you about the antifreeze and the juice,
yeah.
Did you at that point go talk to Dillard Hardison, or did you just continue to ask Mark Jensen questions?
Well, it was still more questions asked, but in that time frame within 20 minutes, I was saying, you got to hear what he's saying.
And after Mark Jensen told you about the juice and the antifreeze, what did he say next?
Well, that night he said that she went to bed and then she was acting all drunk and jumping around on the bed, and he was kind of laughing about it, like, the fact that she was acting drunk and being stupid and stuff. And that's when they went on to the computer and checked the side effects of the Paxil.
He told you he did that?
Yes.
And did he tell you why he did that?
To confirm that it was a side effect of the Paxil, so she would calm down.
So she wouldn't think she was being poisoned?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Well, did he explain to you why he wanted her to calm down?
He didn't explain it. He just said that they went online and checked the side effects, to prove to her that it was a side effect. But as far as him telling me why he did it, there was no why, specifically why he went to check the internet, just to comfort her, I guess.
What else did he tell you after that?
At that point, that's when he told me, that she went to sleep. And the next morning is when he went to the doctor and got her Ambien. Or he went to the doctor and told her told the doctor that she was up all night and she was wired and she couldn't sleep and things like that.
And did he tell you what the doctor gave him?
Yeah, he gave him Ambien for sleeping.
And did he tell you what happened after that?
Yeah, that's when he came home and he gave her an Ambien that morning so she could sleep.
Did he describe to you what Julie's condition was like when he came back from the doctor?
I'm not sure if he described it at that moment, of when he came back, but throughout the course of the day, he said he gave her the Ambien, she slept, and then she started throwing up that day.
And did he tell you what he did about that, or where she threw up, or anything like that?
No, he didn't tell me where she threw up. I would have to guess it was a bathroom or a garbage can or something. I don't know at that point.
Well, what did he tell you then about that after she'd been throwing up?
He said that she couldn't keep anything down, that she would throw up and they would try to give her water and she would throw that up, and she was just having throwing up a little more than usual. And then that night they were all laying around and she was in bed, and that the kids were there. The kids were laying on the bed with them and they were watching TV and things, and that she just didn't feel well and she was really, really drawn out.
And did you say what night this was?
This was the next night, the first night when he gave her the Paxil and she was jumping up around on the bed. Then the next day, this is the second day of it, was the point where she was just laying on the bed and couldn't, just was real lethargic, just laying there, very sick.
And what did he say about where the children were?
They were laying on the bed with her.
Trying to comfort their mother?
Yes, because she was very ill.
Did he tell you anything about how the children were responding to their mother being so sick?
They were very worried and that they wanted her to go to the hospital.
Tell us about what he said about the children wanting her to go to the hospital.
Well, he was saying that they were pushing the issue that mom's got to go to the hospital, some things like that. And he would say, well, if she's not feeling better tomorrow, we will, things along that line. That she's just sick.
Did he tell you what happened then after Julie had been laying in bed watching television with her children?
That night he said that they put the kids to bed, he put the kids to bed, they went to bed. And that night she was pretty bad, and the next morning she came in and she was breathing really hard. She was just really raspy, things like that. Yeah, and that night he also, he gave her more Ambien that night too, to help her sleep.
Did he ever say anything about giving her more juice or antifreeze?
Yeah, that night he did. He gave her more.
When did he give her the juice and the Ambien? The juice and the antifreeze?
I believe he said that was when she was laying down in bed before the kids. That's because she was throwing up all the time. And then for throwing up, that's when he gave her the next glass of juice.
And did he say where the children were at the time that he administered that glass?
No, he didn't say that.
So, see, I think you said he took the children to school or something. Tell me about that.
Oh, that's the third day.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the third day. The next morning when she woke up, she was breathing really raspy and really hard. And he said that she was really labored breathing and she was having a hard time, and that the kids wanted her to call the ambulance for her.
His children wanted to call the ambulance for the mom?
Yes.
And did Mark tell you how he responded to that?
He told them that if she wasn't better by the time they got home from school, that he would call the ambulance.
He was telling you this?
Yeah.
Well, what did he tell you next?
Well, at that point, that's when he told me that he took the kids to school, and then that's when he came home and she was breathing better, or he did something for work, and then he came home and she was breathing better.
What did he tell you? Do you remember as you're sitting here now, did he tell you what he did for work?
Stockbroker.
But you said he did something for work. Did he tell you what he did for work?
I think he said he met a client. Something about meeting a client.
And what happened then after he did this thing for work?
He came home, and that's the point when he came home and she was breathing better. And he said that he got really nervous. He got scared.
Did he tell you why?
Well, she was breathing better and he didn't think she was going to die.
And why would that scare him?
because the kids wanted to take her to the hospital. And if she wasn't better by the time he got home, that's where they were going to go.
Did he tell you how he responded to this?
As far as her breathing better,
What did he do when he came home and found that she was breathing better?
and that's the point when he rolled her over and sat on her back. And
Did he describe to you how she was, what position or condition she was in when he got home?
no, he didn't describe that. He just said that she was breathing better and that she was still sleeping, but she was breathing better. And it wasn't so labored. It didn't seem like she was having as hard as a time breathing.
So what did he tell you that he did?
That's when he said he rolled her over and just sat on her back and pushed on her neck into the pillow,
Pushed what into the pillow?
her face and neck.
And did he tell you what happened?
Said she died.
He suffocated her? Did he use the word suffocate or not?
No,
Did he tell you how long he had to sit on her and shove her face into the pillow?
he didn't give me a time.
What was his demeanor while he was telling you this?
Through most of the conversations, as far as this part, his demeanor was nothing. There was no emotion. There was nothing.
Were you able to tell, or did he ever indicate to you why he was telling you this?
No. I'm just, if I had to assume, I think he's just needed to talk. He wasn't in
Objection to any
jail.
assumption by this witness of anything.
Over how long a period of time did this conversation between you and he, where he was telling you what had happened, over how long a period of time did that conversation take?
This one took probably about 2 hours for that part, I would say, just to go through it all, because there was little breaks and I would tell Dion to come out.
And after he told you this, if he told you what he'd done, did you have any further conversations with him after that?
This was the third day, and I left that morning at 6 in the morning. But the conversation just pretty much just after that point, it was getting lights out, so everybody kind of broke up a little bit. And I said I talked to him in the morning, and that morning I actually got transferred back to prison, which I didn't know I would.
So you never talked to him again after that?
No, it was kind of an abrupt end to our conversation.
Did he tell you what happened after he killed his wife?
Yeah, he brought the kids home from school. He went back to work. And then I believe he picked up the kids from school. And when he came home from school, he said he made the kids wait outside, and he said he'd go in and check on their mom.
So he didn't want his children to see their mom dead in that fashion?
I believe so.
After he'd started telling you this, what had happened, did he ever make any reference to attempting to poison her on any previous occasions?
Yeah, this was actually in the beginning of that conversation. That's where he said he really fucked up there, because if she would have died, he said he tried poison her before he went to a meeting in whatever, I don't know, some stockbrokers meeting, and he said he tried poisoning her before that, and that she had thrown up all over the house and had trails of vomit through the house, and that she just covered it up with paper towels, and that left it for him when he got home. And he had to have the carpets cleaned and all that.
And how did you said he described this as he messed up?
Yeah, he fucked up. That's his words. He fucked up and said that he mouthed off, he was drunk and mouthed off to Klug.
So he did tell you that.
Objection leading.
Overall,
So he did talk.
prior answer.
So he did talk to you about Klug,
Yes,
and he'd also changed his story about Klug. Then
yes.
tell us what he said to you about Klug.
He said that he would have been really fucked if she died that weekend.
Did he tell you why?
Because then he had mouthed off to Klug and he would have came forward right away.
Did he then go back into this conversation with Klug at all with you or not?
That's just at the point where we were starting this whole conversation, the conversation about how when he started saying he did it, and that's when he told me he fucked up with Klug and mouthed off to him when he was drunk. So there wasn't a lot of conversation about it, but he said that he's glad it didn't happen then, and that she was Because he was going, and throughout this conversation, he was going into his defense about how he was going to combat everything you guys were saying about him. And throughout this conversation, he had said that he was glad, that's when the Klug thing came up, that he was glad that she didn't die then because he was going to make it look like she practiced it and got sick and couldn't go through with it. And then he also told me at that point about the defense about there was pictures of antifreeze in his house that you guys were saying that, or that he said that the detective said that you did it, Mark. There was no antifreeze here, and she had to get antifreeze somehow. You took it away. But he was saying that he's got defense of that as far as this, that he's got pictures that show the antifreeze in the house that you guys took. So he was combating that, and then he was saying about the Librium, that how she would always get his prescriptions refilled, that he would never call the doctor, that she would do it all the time and go pick it up herself. So he was telling me how he saw all his defense to how he was going to combat it all.
Oh, well, did he tell you anything else about the defense?
I broached the internet subject with him, and I found out, well, I was asking him, what's with the internet, because this came up throughout the conversations too.
Objection 97123 1B, I believe.
I don't smell any pizza yet. Well, I guess we'll take we're going to take a short break that may turn into a long break. So let me ask you to step out, and please don't talk about the case.
Please, all right.
Judge, just off the top of my head, I have no recollection of ever seeing any notice, summary report, or anything else. Mr. Dillard discusses computers. And if I'm wrong, fine, but I just don't have a recollection of that.
What's up, Mr. Jamboys?
Well, I don't have a recollection of it necessarily either. I don't know every single thing this witness has to tell us about what, I know this, anything that I've got in documentary or recorded form regarding Aaron Dillard's statements have been turned over to Mr. Elby, but I don't know that that's a legitimate objection.
Well, it is if any oral statement of the accused which you plan to use at the trial. So whether it's in documentary form or not, if you have foreknowledge, then...
I understand that, Your Honor. And what I don't know, as I was sitting here asking a question, and as he started talking about that, I didn't know what he was going to say, but excuse me from my co-counsel has a much better memory than I do, is pointing something out to me. Well, there was discussion. This witness has given, there was an interview that was done with this witness on October 10th, 2007, and counsel, I'd direct your attention. There was talk about the computer, and it's bottom page 24 and the top of page 25. But I don't know what this witness was going to say, and I guess what we could do, Your Honor, is voir dire the witness on this outside the presence of the jury. And
well, let's start with, there was apparently some written document.
there was a statement provided, a transcript of an interview that was done with Mr. Dillard on October 10th, and that has been provided to defense counsel.
No, I provided it to you.
What's that?
We have our own.
I provided it to you, right? Well, if you have your own, I haven't received that statement.
Oh, is this, well, here's what I'm looking at. Is this what you
It's the
gave
same
me?
thing. No, this is what they gave us, and it's the same thing.
Oh,
What page? But if there are any differences, I should have your transcript as well.
It's page 27 and 28.
In other words, this was supplied on some kind of an audio, either a
Right.
tape or a CD, and you made two separate transcriptions, the state's and the defense?
Apparently.
I do move for any transcripts that I don't have.
No, I don't think so. A transcript is merely what someone heard and wrote down. The audio recording is what has to be produced, not what somebody thought was on the audio recording.
I think to the extent that they rely ever on a transcript, and I think
Providing our
All
copy.
right, and I was just going to say, maybe he'll produce it, that's fine. I don't want to get bogged down on that. The bottom line, though, is if there's a feud about it, I don't want to get too involved with it, because it strikes me that what has to be produced, if they produce the audio, then it's, after that, it's just a matter of how people hear it.
And that's what we did. But I don't have
Does
any
it
problem.
refer to this issue that is now being discussed by the witness?
The transcripts they're different transcripts, but they're the same conversation, Your Honor. And
No, but either way, does it refer to comments attributed to the accused during the discussion that the witness is indicating about usage of the internet?
it pertains to usage of the computer, but I don't know what the witness is going to say, Your Honor. And
All right, so if he's claiming that he has no foreknowledge.
Which is a little difficult for me to understand, because my recollection is that the question is, did he say anything about the computer? And throughout this direct examination, to Mr. Jamboy's credit, he seems to know exactly what's going to be coming, which is what I expect, and he certainly seems to anticipate some particular answer about the computer. So that's why I object, because it seems to be calling for something specific that I haven't been advised of.
There was reference to the computer in this previous interview. Your Honor, I don't have that world's greatest memory, as you know, and I don't, although I anticipate the general line of this witness's testimony, as you know, he's not reading this from a script. And this isn't scripted out. You just don't know what a witness is going to say. So I would not presume to suggest that I know what Aaron Dillard is going to say on the witness stand.
Right, the bottom line is it your representation that you do not know what he's going to say and that you haven't previously discussed it with him?
No, I've not talked to him at all.
Or anyone under your control?
I mean,
whose conduct is imputed to you?
That's true.
All right. Did you have anything further?
Well, the one portion of this transcript in which there's mention of a computer is discussion of using, of there being software in which you can either work from home or the office or vice versa. But there's no timing. There's no timing on that, and I don't think it's relevant.
There's no timing on that.
No timing as to if there's a claim that it says, but he also knows about software that he can be in his office and use his home computer to do stuff. There's no indication that there was a statement that any such thing was ever used prior to December 3rd, 1998. It doesn't have any relevance.
Your objection was based upon a lack of notice, and I'm not hearing anything that would cause me to embrace your objection.
If it goes beyond that, then I still have the same notice objection.
If it goes beyond the software?
Beyond this.
The bottom line is, all that the district attorney is obliged, now correct me if I'm wrong, all that the district attorney is obliged to disclose to you is a summary of any oral statement attributed to the accused which the district attorney plans to offer at trial. And so it would have to be something of which he or someone under his control had knowledge. Now, where am I going wrong?
Well,
Just a minute, let him answer if he wants.
Maybe we can resolve this.
All right, if you can resolve it.
I'm not trying to trick anybody or pull any surprises. I'm willing to have the witness talk about this outside the presence of the jury so that we can allay Mr. Albee's concerns that the witness is going to have some cataclysmic thing to say that hasn't been disclosed to him. Let's find out what the witness has to say, because I don't know what he's going to say.
Well, that means we have to hear it twice if it's...
That's true.
And I would rather not do that, but I suppose, it's your trial. Go ahead and ask some questions, but I don't want to go too deeply into this because, go ahead.
What were you going to say for the objection?
I think it was talking about the defense. I think, is that what we were talking about? Is it what he was saying to what he was going to do to defend what you were saying against him? I believe that's where we were.
I'll ask the reporter to read the last
About the
question.
internet.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, there was a couple of things about the internet, actually.
Well, tell us everything you...
The first one is, in the meeting I actually had with you guys, I spoke to you and said, well, check the computer about to see if he had software that said he could remote access to log in from work and actually use his own desktop.
Okay, that's what you said.
That's what I was going to say about that. And also, we were talking about the hits on the internet when he was there, saying that about the hits, he was going to say that, well, Julie could have done it, you know, that kind of thing. That's all I was going to add.
That was the defense, that Julie could have done it.
Yeah, that Julie, that he said he had one piece of information that he said that proves Julie could have done it. That's what he had told me.
Okay, and we'll go into that when the jury comes back, if the court allows. I mean, and Your Honor, let's remember this, it's 12 minutes to 12, and this jury's made it very clear. They've got pizza coming at noon, and they do not want to be delayed.
The last thing that I would do would be to delay them on their pizza. All right. Are we ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, the objection's over. Ask the jury to come in.
Please be seated.
All right, the objection has been overruled. Go ahead.
So, and I forgot what the last question was, which just goes to show what an impoverished memory I have, but I'd request the reporter read it back to the witness.
Question, well, did he tell you anything else about the defense? You want the answer also?
Yes.
Answer just, I broached the internet subject with him and I found out, I was asking him, what's with the internet, you know, because this came up throughout the conversations too.
And then you were interrupted, so could you please continue with that answer?
I was going to say that as far as we were talking about his defense on the hits on the internet, as far as reference to poison and things like that, he was saying that you could go to any site and then there would be other links that just pop up. Like you could have went to a poison site 10 times and it would show, because there was so many pages connected to it, that there was this many poison sites.
Did he tell you anything else about the internet history or his defense?
He told me as far as that he had one occasion that he could prove that Julie was on the internet, because I think this came up at the same time I was asking him, how can you prove like she was self-medicating herself? He says, well, I had asked him about, you were branching off the internet site, but
just however you have to answer the question, answer the question.
Okay, yeah, because the conversation was about, I asked him, well, did she go buy all the Benadryl, and do you have receipts that she signed that she bought the Benadryl with the debit card or anything? Because I was asking him about all that stuff because he was saying his defense to me. And he said he had one piece of information about the computer sites that proves she was the one on the computer.
Well, did he tell you what it was?
He wouldn't tell me what that was, but he said that to me.
Was this before or after he told you that he killed her?
This was after.
So he told you he killed her, but he wouldn't tell you what his defense was in that regard?
Not as far as the internet sites, but he was telling me everything, you know, the points about the pictures of the antifreeze and, you know, just simple things, but he did not tell me the actual occasion that he could prove that she was on the internet.
Did he tell you anything else about his defense that you can remember as you're sitting here now?
You know, I talked about so many things, I don't know if I missed anything or not.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you can remember about what Mr. Jensen told you that you haven't told the jury already?
Not that I recall. You know what I mean? I don't remember everything we already talked about. You know, I don't know if I broached every subject or not, so.
And you said, and you already noticed that it's 6 minutes to 12, and I understand that there's an important deadline that we can't miss. And the next area that we're going into with this witness may take another 20, 25 minutes.
Let's break at that point, and let me ask you be ready to go again if everything works out all right at about 1 o'clock. Is that all right?
Maybe 1:15, Your Honor?
Well, I was thinking 1 o'clock, actually.
Well, Your Honor, I'm just thinking they're wearing Packer garb and they're eating pizza and they may want to spend some more time than...
I'll let them vote.
Okay.
How many want to start? 1 versus 1:15? 1 o'clock? All right. I won't even ask. All right, 1 o'clock.
Thank you, Aaron.